Hey guys. Tonight, we begin not in a battlefield or a bustling market, but inside the forbidden city, behind high red walls where beauty was power, and loyalty was everything. It's Imperial China, where concubines lived in splendor, yet every smile, every glance, every whispered word could mean survival or destruction. Because before they were trusted with the emperor's affection, they were tested. The world is gilded, silent, and full of hidden dangers where even devotion had to be proven. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft, steady hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations. You've just stepped into the Forbidden City, where loyalty was tested in ways you might not survive. You step through the heavy silk drapes, and the palace swallows you whole. The scent of sandalwood, jasmine, and roasted tea leaves wraps around you like a warm, but slightly threatening hug. Beyond the latticed windows, the gardens whisper secrets, the rustle of peonies, the faint hum of water trickling through carved stone channels. You want to breathe it all in, but you quickly realize that even your own heartbeat feels loud here. Your feet make no sound against the polished stone floor, but you can feel the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes. Maybe they're real. Maybe they're imagined. Either way, the tension is almost edible, like the aroma of tea, but with a metallic tang of danger underneath. You're not exactly nervous. You're aware, hyper-aware. The corridors twist like the stories of women who came before you, women who learned, often too late, that obedience could be a life preserver, and defiance could be a knife sliding across silk. The palace is mesmerizing though. Painted dragons coil across the ceilings. Sunlight pours through latticed windows in patterns that seem almost purposeful, and somewhere, the low hum of servants balancing trays of steaming porcelain cups adds a soft rhythm to the tension. You notice a young woman kneeling at a low lacquered table, arranging teacups with hands that tremble slightly. Every gesture is a test, every glance is recorded. You try not to flinch at the thought that the slightest misstep could ripple all the way to the emperor himself. You lean a little closer. Do they really make you do that? You whisper, though not expecting an answer. The girl's eyes flicker in acknowledgement, the tiniest tremor betraying fear she's trying so hard to mask. You realize that these tests of loyalty aren't always grandiose or obvious. Sometimes, they're as simple as watching how someone reacts to a cup of tea, a flick of a fan, or even a question asked in the wrong tone. It's like the worst performance review of your life, only with higher stakes than your entire LinkedIn network combined. You walk further, past a group of women whose conversations seem muted, polite, yet their eyes dart around like trapped animals. One older concubine glides past you, her embroidered robe whispering against the stone, her smile polite but sharp, calculating. Even her laughter is measured, a rhythm designed to hide both amusement and terror. You realize that humor and rebellion exist here, but only in small, private doses. It's the human equivalent of hiding snacks in your desk drawer at work. Tiny rebellions keep you sane, but they must remain invisible. A tray of tea arrives, and you watch as the women approach it. Each is asked to serve it to a statue of the emperor. You pause. A statue, you blink. Yes, a statue. But the flowers, the incense, the arrangement, every detail is a trap. Spill a drop, and you fail. Misplace a cup, and you've revealed yourself. You try to imagine your modern life, juggling your laptop, coffee, and a toddler while your boss watches. And now multiply that by 1,000, with actual life, or death consequences. You can almost hear your office colleagues complaining about Monday morning meetings, and you laugh quietly, thinking, at least HR doesn't judge you with poison. Somehow, despite all this, there's beauty. The sunlight hits the gold embroidery on their robes just right, hairpins catch the light, and the controlled movements of the concubines are almost hypnotic. You realize that loyalty here isn't abstract. It's tangible, a pressure in the chest, a smell, a sound, a feeling in your stomach. And yet you can't look away. You spot the first subtle test, a bowl of soup, steaming, aromatic, mild poison laced within. Reactions, paleness, hesitation, sweat are all recorded. you flinch at the thought. In the modern world, you might panic at a new sauce packet or over-seasoned dish. Here, one reaction could haunt you for weeks, or end your place in the palace entirely. And yet, the women move with grace, swallowing fear like it's just another flavor in the broth. Then you see it whispers in silk, secret glances, tiny gestures conveying everything without words. You wish you could join them in their silent conspiracy, feel the thrill of minor rebellion, but instead you are just observing, a ghost in this dangerous theater. Humor flares in your mind. A modern meme flashes across your imagination. Surviving HR email threads is harder than surviving the Emperor's palace. You chuckle quietly, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of tension around you. The inner chambers beckon, and you move closer, drawn by curiosity. You see tests that go beyond soup or cups. Tests of trust, tests of secrecy. A simple question can unravel everything. A wrong glance can speak louder than months of obedience. And yet, the women navigate it with a skill you can barely comprehend, floating through danger like dancers on a wire strung across a canyon. If you think this is all subtlety, ceremonies, and embroidered tension, you're just scratching the surface. Ahead, the tests grow stranger, crueler, and almost impossible to detect. You can feel it in the pulse of the palace itself, every footstep, every whisper, every fold of silk vibrating like a chord in an ancient symphony. Wait until you see how far loyalty can be tested when secrets, whispers, and minor betrayals intertwine in a game that could literally kill. You step further into the inner chambers, and the air changes. Thicker, warmer, tinged with incense so sweet it almost masks the faint metallic tang of tension. Every footfall echoes, though the floors are polished stone, every breath feels amplified. You realize that the palace itself is alive, listening, judging, breathing with you. Somewhere above, silk curtains flutter like nervous eyelids. A new test begins. One of the concubines is summoned to a low, ornate table where a set of small, exquisitely painted boxes awaits. Each box contains a token, a gem, a folded note, a dried flower. She is told to select one, and her choice will reveal her true loyalty. You lean closer, curious. How can a dried flower, or worse, a piece of jade, possibly signify devotion? And yet, you watch as her hand hovers, trembling ever so slightly. One flicker of hesitation, and the chief eunuch notes it, scribbling invisible judgments in a silent ledger only he can read. You feel a shiver run down your spine, thinking, and I thought choosing lunch was stressful. Across the room, another woman kneels before a large, lacquered screen. She must retell the Emperor's last decree, not verbatim, but in a way that demonstrates comprehension, loyalty, and humility simultaneously. You catch yourself imagining this scenario at a modern office, rephrasing your manager's instructions perfectly while someone scrutinizes your every inflection, eye movement, and breathing pattern. Only here, the penalty for a mistake isn't a performance review. It's demotion, exile, or public shame. You quietly imagine Zoom calls with that level of life, or death intensity, and snicker. You wouldn't survive 15 minutes. The whispers in corners continue. A subtle network of secrets, hints, and warnings. One older concubine catches your gaze for a fraction of a second, a glimmer of mischief in her eyes. It's almost like she's letting you in on the joke. The Emperor's tests are cruel, arbitrary, yet strangely beautiful in their precision. You realize that humor is the invisible armor here, the only thing that doesn't alert the walls, the ears, or the eyes. You imagine her thinking, if you think surviving this is about obedience, just wait until you have to dodge poison and court intrigue. And then, the most subtle and terrifying test appears: observation of thought. Though not literally. The concubines are tasked with performing trivial acts that reveal inner character, arranging flowers, folding silk, serving tea. To a casual observer, these are menial chores. But you, walking in their midst, begin to notice the tiny tells. The flick of a wrist, the hesitation in a bow, the barely perceptible curl of a finger. Each movement betrays emotions, loyalties, and intentions. You can practically hear the chief eunuch thinking, aha, she hesitates, what is she hiding? And you think, wow, I can barely fold fitted sheets without messing it up, let alone survive a palace audit for my soul. The scent of jasmine intensifies as you step closer to a small alcove where another test is unfolding. A concubine is offered a cup of tea. Again, the stakes invisible. She is told it is specially prepared, and her reaction will be noted. She sips, pauses, and swallows carefully, lips barely trembling. You think about your last sip of coffee that was too bitter and feel a flicker of sympathy. In this palace, even the faintest grimace could signal rebellion, disloyalty, or weakness. And yet she smiles, delicate, measured, flawless. The tension surrounding her is like watching a tightrope walker without a net, and somehow she glides across. You wander toward a private corridor, the walls lined with silk tapestries depicting dragons, phoenixes, and scenes of imperial glory. Each stitch seems purposeful, each thread a silent instruction in decorum, loyalty, or fear. A servant whispers past, carrying a tray of fruit, and you catch the scent of oranges and pomegranates. A sweet respite from the heavy incense. You imagine texting your friends about the absurdity of the scene, but of course, that would be inadvisable. You suppress a laugh, thinking, "At least my phone doesn't judge me while I peel an orange." Then, the psychological games begin. One concubine is asked to write a letter to the emperor, though he will never read it. The content is meaningless, except that it must reveal subtle obedience, inner fortitude, and loyalty. You watch her carefully choose every word, pen hovering above the paper like a sword suspended by threads. You remember drafting emails in high school, and think about how much pressure you put on yourself over a subject line. Here, the subject line might determine the rest of your life. The courtyard is quiet now, only the soft crunch of gravel under your shoes, and the occasional sigh of silk. A small group of concubines gathers to exchange a glance, a barely noticeable nod, a secret acknowledgement that they are alive together in a perilous bollet. You feel the pulse of camaraderie, fragile but vital, threading through the tension like a lifeline. You imagine office gossip that actually kept you alive and think, "Suddenly, my co-workers seem heroic." As you linger near a lattice window, you see a test you could never anticipate, a hidden observation of reaction to rumors. The palace thrives on them, rumors of favoritism, whispers of plots, secrets of past failures. One woman hears a false accusation and must maintain composure. Her eyes flicker ever so slightly, her lips tighten, but she does not speak, does not betray emotion. You think about how you flinch when someone comments on your Spotify playlist, and then you laugh quietly. This is on a whole other level. The afternoon deepens, and the light through the lattice shifts, casting shadow patterns that seem almost alive. Every step you take is calculated, not because someone is behind you, but because you feel the history pressing in. The palace, the tests, the women, the whispers, they all seem to watch, to breathe with you. And amidst it all, you realize something remarkable. These tests, cruel as they are, demand resilience, creativity, and wit. Humor, small rebellion. Grace under pressure, it's all part of survival. And you observing, feel like you're part of a secret that stretches across centuries. Finally, a hush falls. The concubines kneel in silent rows, awaiting judgment that may never come, or may come in ways you cannot anticipate. You take a step back, heart still racing, and think about how absurd and elegant it all is. If you think this has been tense, wait until you see what happens when loyalty is tested not by tea, letters, or whispered glances, but by life itself. Because the palace has games yet to play, and you've only just begun to understand the rules. You wake the next morning to the sound of bells, soft, melodic, and yet somehow commanding. The palace doesn't ask you to rise, it demands it. Outside your chamber, footsteps shuffle along the polished stone corridors, silk rustles like whispers, and faint voices chant the morning rites. The air is thick with incense and dew carried in from the gardens, cool against your skin but heavy in your lungs. Today, you realize, is not just another day of silent glances and carefully measured tea pours. Today, the Emperor's court has decided it's time for another round of loyalty tests. You try to stretch, but even that feels risky here. In this palace, stretching too luxuriously might look like arrogance. You smirk at the thought. Imagine being judged on how you yawn. Actually, no need to imagine. It's happening right now. Servants enter carrying trays of food, delicate rice cakes, steaming bowls of congee, slices of preserved plum. But you know better than to trust anything placed before you. Every bite is part of the theater. Every swallow a silent oath. One concubine across the hall stares at her bowl for a fraction too long, and immediately a eunuch leans in, his eyes sharp as daggers. You shiver, spoon hovering, wondering if your modern habit of poking at food absent-mindedly would have gotten you exiled by breakfast. The women are led into the Hall of Whispered Petals, a chamber whose name promises tranquility, but whose walls are practically dripping with tension. Murals of phoenixes and cranes line the walls, but the soft painted eyes feel like they are watching you. The emperor himself is not present. Instead, the eunuchs oversee the rituals. You can't decide if that makes you more comfortable or more unnerved. At least with the emperor, judgment comes from one man. With eunuchs, judgment is 1,000 tiny knives hidden in silk. The first test is deceptively simple. Each woman must recite a poem, chosen at random from the Imperial anthology. Poetry here is not mere art. It's a measure of composure, intellect, and loyalty. You watch as one concubine's lips tremble ever so slightly as she recites lines about the moon reflecting in water. The eunuch tilts his head, noting the pause. You feel your own throat tighten. If this were you, you'd be reciting nursery rhymes just to survive. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Suddenly sounds very imperial when your life depends on it. Then comes a harsher test. A sealed letter is passed from one concubine to another. None know what it contains. They are told it is a secret from the emperor, entrusted to them alone. Each woman must hold it for a moment before passing it along, her face carefully neutral, betraying nothing. But of course, the real secret isn't in the letter. It's in the way you handle it. Do you grip it too tightly? Do your eyes dart toward it? Do you look as though you want to open it? You can feel the tension ripple through the room like a string pulled taut. When the letter comes near you, you almost want to scream. You don't even want to touch it. You imagine your modern self holding someone else's phone at a party and everyone watching your reaction. Same level of paranoia, multiplied by 100. By midday, you're led into the gardens. The air outside is a relief. Magnolias bloom overhead, koi ripple in ponds, and cicadas sing their endless summer chorus. But beauty is just another disguise. Here loyalty is tested through conversation. A concubine is paired with a eunuch, instructed to talk freely. The eunuch drops subtle provocations, a rumor about another concubine, a veiled criticism of the emperor, a sly suggestion of discontent. The trap is obvious, and yet it isn't. Because silence can betray as much as speech, and agreement or disagreement are equally dangerous. You hold your breath, watching the dance of words, marveling at how a simple nod could end a career. You think of modern small talk with coworkers, how exhausting it is to smile and nod through office gossip. Then you grin faintly, at least in the office. Nobody poisons you for nodding at the wrong time. One of the younger concubines stumbles. Her lips twitch as she almost agrees with a sly comment about the emperor's absence. Immediately, the eunuch stiffens, his eyes narrowing. The girl bows deeply, murmuring a correction, but the damage is done. You feel your stomach tighten as you watch her face pale. Somewhere, someone will remember this. A note will be made. Loyalty, once questioned, is never forgotten. You swallow hard, tasting the metallic air, and think, so this is what walking on eggshells really means. Afternoon shadows stretch long across the courtyard when the next ordeal begins. Each woman is brought before a shallow basin of water, in which floats a single lotus flower. They are asked to write, with brush and ink, a phrase declaring loyalty. But the ink, you quickly notice, is water-soluble. As soon as the brush touches the surface, the words dissolve, letters writhing into nothingness. It's an illusion, a futility test. The real loyalty isn't in the words. It's in the composure with which you accept their vanishing. You stare at the water, at the ink blooming like dark smoke, and realize how symbolic it all is. Promises here are always temporary, always dissolving. Yet you must still write them beautifully. You smirk. It's like agreeing to new terms and conditions. Online, you know they'll change tomorrow, but you still pretend to read every word. Evening descends, the sky outside bruised with violet and gold. Lanterns flicker to life in the corridors, and the palace shifts from daytime formality to nighttime intimacy. But tonight, the loyalty test takes on a darker, more theatrical form. The concubines are led into a chamber where a meal awaits. Sumptuous, rich, and far too extravagant to trust. You watch as each dish is brought forward, placed carefully, almost ceremoniously, in front of them. They are told to serve one another before eating. The test is clear: who serves generously, who hesitates, who watches too closely. You shift uneasily, imagining your own awkwardness at a dinner party, when deciding how much dessert to leave for others. Multiply that by imperial paranoia, and suddenly cake feels like a weapon. The night deepens. The women sit in silence after the meal, eyes lowered, waiting for a sign of approval that may never come. The eunuchs stand like shadows against the walls, their expressions unreadable. You can feel the exhaustion in the air. Every breath of incense, every carefully measured gesture, every swallowed word has drained the room. Yet the palace doesn't sleep. It waits, it watches. Always, you retreat slightly, back toward the corridors where the lantern light flickers. The walls here whisper with drafts, with memories of countless others who walked these halls under the same crushing tension. And just when you think the day's tests are over, you hear the faint rustle of silk behind you, and a voice, calm, almost amused, says, "Tomorrow, the true test begins. Words and glances are nothing. Tomorrow you will prove your loyalty with more than breath." You stop cold. The palace seems to hold its breath too. You realize this was only the beginning, the easy part, if such a word can even exist here. And if you thought today was cruel, you have no idea what's waiting just beyond the horizon of tomorrow's dawn. Morning arrives not with birdsong but with drums. A deep, rolling beat that vibrates through the palace walls, rattling your chest and reminding you that sleep is a luxury, not a right. You blink in the half-light of dawn, wondering how the concubines manage to look flawless after nights like this. You, meanwhile, would look like you'd wrestled with your pillow and lost. Servants sweep through the corridors with purpose. They carry bronze basins filled with cold water, setting them down for the concubines to wash. The water is icy, shocking against the skin, but no one flinches. To flinch is weakness. To sigh is indulgence. To complain, unthinkable. You splash your face anyway, biting back the gasp, and wonder how you'd ever survive without a hot shower. Then again, in this palace, even showers would probably come with a loyalty test. Today's trial is not subtle. It is endurance. The concubines are summoned to the Hall of Golden Echoes, a chamber so cavernous your footsteps sound like gongs. The ceiling arches high above, painted with dragons that seem to slither when the lantern light flickers. At the center stands a series of low stools, each one deliberately uncomfortable. Too narrow, too hard, designed to bite into your bones. The women are ordered to kneel upon them, hands folded, eyes lowered. You kneel too, just to see what it feels like. Within minutes your legs ache, your back stiffens, and your pride begins whispering complaints you dare not voice. The concubines remain motionless, serene as stone statues. Time drips slowly, each second stretching like pulled silk. You shift your weight and immediately regret it. The sound of movement echoes, far too loud. You think about your modern struggles sitting through long meetings, and you laugh bitterly inside. This is worse. At least in a meeting, you could sneak a glance at your phone. Here, even blinking feels like rebellion. The eunuchs pace the hall, their robes swishing ominously. One suddenly claps his hands sharp as thunder. The women must rise and bow, then resume kneeling. Rise and bow, then kneel again. Over and over. The rhythm becomes a form of torment, a ritual designed to wear down body and spirit alike. Sweat beads on your forehead, and you wonder how they manage to remain graceful through what is essentially imperial squats, disguised as devotion. You grin faintly, imagining a fitness app called Concubine Core Workout. It would go viral. Hours later, when the women are finally dismissed, you stumble into the courtyard. Legs trembling. The sunlight is blinding, the air heavy with the fragrance of blooming wisteria. You think you're free, until the next test arrives. A eunuch steps forward with a birdcage, inside of which a tiny sparrow flutters. Each concubine is asked to hold the cage and whisper to the bird as though it were the emperor himself. The task seems absurd, but the meaning is clear. How you speak in private reveals who you truly are. The bird tilts its head, feathers ruffling, as one woman coos sweet nothings with impeccable grace. Another whispers stiffly, her tone brittle. The eunuch nods, makes a note. You suppress a laugh at the thought of whispering to your pet goldfish back home, only to imagine it reporting your loyalty to the emperor. Suddenly, the joke doesn't seem quite as funny. But then comes the most unnerving test yet: temptation. The women are brought into a smaller chamber, where treasures glitter in low light, pearls, jade combs, silk robes embroidered with gold thread. Each concubine is told to select one object as a gift from the emperor. The trap is obvious, but no less effective. Choose too greedily, and you are marked as selfish. Choose too humbly, and you insult the emperor's generosity. Choose nothing at all, and you risk seeming aloof or ungrateful. You watch, holding your breath, as each woman hesitates at the table, fingers brushing treasures like they are handling fire. You think about your own indecision in front of a vending machine, and realize you'd be executed by the second row of snacks. One woman selects a simple jade hairpin. Bowing deeply, the eunuch's face reveals nothing. Another chooses an embroidered robe, hesitating before she touches it, as though afraid it might bite. The silence in the room is unbearable, like the hush before a thunderstorm. You feel sweat gather at your temple, though it isn't you being tested. It doesn't matter. The palace makes you feel as though you are always part of the trial. Night falls again, and the final test of the day arrives. The concubines are summoned to the moon pavilion, its open lattice walls glowing with lantern light, the scent of night blooming jasmine heavy in the air. Here, they must share secrets. Each is asked a question, seemingly harmless, about their family, their past, their feelings. The questions are bait, crafted to lure out truths better left unsaid. A wrong word now could be twisted into betrayal tomorrow. You listen, heart pounding, as one woman recounts a memory of her mother braiding her hair. Another describes the scent of her childhood village after rain. The stories are tender, fragile, human, but in the silence that follows, you realize each word is being weighed, measured, and recorded. Even the most innocent detail could be twisted into evidence. You shiver, suddenly aware of your own thoughts. How even silence feels dangerous here. When the session ends, the women bow deeply, retreating like shadows dissolving into the night. The eunuchs remain, their expressions inscrutable, their notes tucked away like daggers in silk. You stand there a moment longer, listening to the cicadas, watching the lanterns flicker in the breeze. And you realize something chilling. The emperor doesn't need to be present. His power saturates the air, woven into every glance, every word, every silence. The palace itself is his test, his ever watchful eye. You take a slow breath, steadying yourself. If this is what loyalty looks like, poems, cages, temptations, whispered secrets, you can only imagine what comes next. Because tomorrow the tests will move beyond symbols and words. Tomorrow, they will touch flesh and blood. And if you thought kneeling, bowing, and whispering to sparrows was cruel, wait until you see what happens when loyalty is tested with life itself. The drums come earlier this morning, or maybe the night was simply too short. Either way, the sound rattles through your bones before the sun has fully dared to climb above the palace walls. You sit up, groggy, rubbing your eyes, and for a moment you forget where you are. The silk drapes, the faint incense smoke curling toward the rafters, the distant shuffle of servants. It all rushes back, and you realize once again that here, even your dreams are not your own. The concubines file silently into the courtyard, their embroidered slippers whispering against the stone. Their faces are already painted, their hair combed into perfect loops and coils. You wonder if they ever wake up looking human, or if they spring out of bed fully polished, like porcelain dolls with alarm clocks built into their heads. You'd show up with pillow creases on your cheek and toothpaste on your shirt. Not exactly palace ready. The eunuchs are waiting, grim as statues carved from shadow. Today, they announce, the tests will move beyond words and gestures. Today, loyalty must be proven in the body. The statement hangs in the morning air like smoke. No one dares to ask what that means. You do what you always do. You pretend you know exactly what's going on, while inside you're scrambling, like someone caught in an exam without studying. The first trial is deceptively simple. The concubines are led to a line of porcelain bowls, each filled with liquid that shimmers oddly in the light. At first, you think it's water. But then you see the color, thick, golden, with a bitter herbal scent that curls inside your nose. Medicine, yes, but more potion than remedy. Each woman must drink without hesitation, proving her trust that the emperor would never harm her. You lean closer. The liquid reeks of ginseng and something darker, something metallic. One sip could be a cure or a slow poison. Your stomach lurches just watching them. One by one, the concubines lift the bowls with both hands, bow slightly and drink. The silence is suffocating. Every swallow is a gamble, every heartbeat a countdown. You imagine doing this in your own life, someone handing you a latte and saying, "Drink it. Don't ask what's in it." You'd hesitate, even at Starbucks. When it's over, no one falters. At least not yet. The concubines sit composed, serene. You can't tell if their calm is faith or practiced theatre. Maybe both. The eunuchs scribble in their ledgers, eyes flicking over every twitch, every blink. You shift uneasily, your tongue dry. Silently grateful no one is shoving a steaming bowl of mysterious liquid at you. But there's no relief. The second trial begins almost immediately. The concubines are led into a chamber lined with mirrors, polished bronze that warps reflections into strange, ghostly doubles. In the center, a brazier burns, smoke curling upward, thick with the smell of sandalwood. Here, the women must stand barefoot on heated tiles, reciting verses of loyalty to the emperor. The longer they last, the deeper their devotion is judged to be. You step close enough to feel the heat radiating from the floor. It bites at your skin even through your shoes. The women stand barefoot, their faces smooth as still ponds. You can almost hear the hiss of their flesh against the warmed stone, though no one flinches. A single grimace, a single twitch of pain, would mark them as weak. You wince in sympathy. You can't even walk across a beach in summer without doing that ridiculous hot sand dance. Here, the dance would cost your head. One woman falters, just slightly, shifting her weight. The eunuch's eyes narrow. The emperor's shadow grows long, even when he is not in the room. The woman steadies herself quickly, but the mark is there, etched in the silence. You swallow hard, feeling the sting in your own souls though you haven't moved an inch. When at last they are dismissed, the air outside feels mercifully cool. The concubines walk with measured grace, though you know their feet must burn. Their endurance is terrifying, their silence louder than screams. You wonder how often loyalty is confused with survival, and whether anyone in this palace truly knows the difference. But the tests are not done. Not even close. That evening, under the pale wash of moonlight, the concubines are gathered again. This time in the emperor's hunting grounds, a carefully curated wilderness within the palace walls. The scent of pine needles mingles with the musk of caged animals. Here, the loyalty test takes a crueler shape. Each woman is given a small bowl of raw meat. The eunuchs release a wolf, half-starved, ribs jutting beneath its fur, eyes glowing like coals. The task is simple. Hold your ground. Offer the meat only when commanded. Flee, and you are unworthy. Disobey, and the punishment is worse than claws. You freeze. The wolf snarls, saliva dripping from its jaws, pacing like a shadow with teeth. The concubines hold their bowls steady, their hands trembling only slightly. You can feel the tension in the air, the way fear coils like a living thing. The wolf lunges forward, snarling, snapping, and yet the women remain still. You nearly shout, nearly reach for them, but the eunuchs watch with hawk eyes. Intervention is not permitted. At last, a clap of the eunuch's hands breaks the spell. The women extend their bowls, the wolf devours the offering, and silence falls again. But you are shaking. Not from the wolf. No, from the realization that this is the point. To watch danger approach and not move. To face teeth and claws and pretend you are safe. To prove loyalty by denying fear itself. Later, when the women return to their chambers, you walk alone through the palace gardens. The moonlight glistens on the ponds, the lilies glow faintly, and the cicadas sing like 1,000 ticking clocks. And you think this isn't loyalty. This is control. A system so complete that even terror becomes a test, and even survival feels like devotion. You pause at the garden gate, looking back toward the dark silhouette of the palace, its rooftops curling like dragons' spines against the night sky. You wonder what could possibly come after wolves and burning floors and poison in porcelain bowls. But deep down, you already know. If today tested flesh, tomorrow will test blood. And if you thought loyalty was cruel in the body, wait until you see what it demands of the heart. The next morning greets you not with drums this time, but with silence. And somehow, the silence is worse. It presses on your ears like a weight, as though the palace itself is holding its breath. You follow the concubines through winding corridors, lit only by narrow shafts of dawn light. The air smells faintly metallic, like blood hidden beneath incense. You arrive at the Hall of Ancestral Shadows. The name alone is enough to make your skin crawl. The chamber is lined with tall wooden tablets, each bearing the names of emperors past. Their spirits are said to linger here, watching every word, every movement. You're not sure about ghosts, but the atmosphere is heavy, suffocating, as though the very air disapproves of you. The eunuchs step forward, their voices smooth, rehearsed. Today they announce loyalty will be tested through blood. Not metaphorical devotion, not symbolic gestures. Actual, physical blood. You resist the urge to step back. You've seen movies, you've read stories. But standing here, seeing the sharp glint of a small ceremonial blade resting on silk, it's different. Much different. One by one, the concubines are called to the altar. They prick their fingers, letting a bead of blood fall into a shallow bowl filled with wine. The red swirls into the liquid, mingling until it's indistinguishable. A ritual of unity, the eunuchs explain, though you know it's something else, proof that their very essence belongs to the emperor. It is as binding as any chain. When the bowl is offered to you, though you are only an observer, you hesitate. The blade gleams waiting. You imagine explaining to your doctor back home, "Yes, I participated in a loyalty test involving questionable blood, sharing practices in a haunted palace." You'd be locked up. Here, refusal would be far worse. You grit your teeth, press the blade, and watch as your drop vanishes into the crimson swirl. The wine ripples, as if swallowing you whole. The concubines drink next. Each takes a ceremonial sip of the wine, blood mixture, their lips barely touching the surface. Your stomach twists. The ritual isn't about flavor. It's about submission. About swallowing devotion until it becomes part of the body. You can't help but think about communion wafers at church, and how at least those don't risk hepatitis. But the ceremony isn't over. Oh no! This is only the first layer of the blood test. The eunuchs summon small, lacquered boxes, each containing an object from the concubines. Past a lock of hair, a scrap of childhood clothing, a trinket given by a family member. These are not gifts, they are leverage. The women must burn them before the tablets of the ancestors, proving they've cut ties to every other loyalty. But the emperor. The flames lick greedily at the offerings. The smell of singed silk, scorched wood, and burnt hair curls into the air, acrid and nauseating. You watch the women's eyes as their tokens vanish into ash. Some remain expressionless, but others can't hide the flicker of pain, the brief tremor in their hands. You feel it in your own chest, like watching someone tear a photograph of their childhood and toss it into fire. You imagine being forced to burn your phone, deleting every memory, every contact, every part of your life before now. Some of you would gladly set fire to your ex's texts, sure. But everything. That's a different kind of death. The chamber grows hotter, the smoke thicker. The ancestors' names loom above, judging silently. When the last token is gone, the eunuchs bow deeply and declare the ritual complete. But you know nothing is complete in this palace. This was just another brick in the wall, another thread in the net tightening around the concubines. Night falls with a heavy stillness. You wander the palace gardens again, needing air, though the fragrance of jasmine feels sickly sweet after so much smoke. You pass a pond where koi ripple the surface, their mouths opening and closing like silent whispers. You almost envy them, swimming in circles, ignorant of tests and blood and loyalty. Almost. Then you remember they probably end up as dinner. Not much of an escape either. As you stand there, the lanterns flickering in the distance, you realize how far the tests have gone. From words to gestures to body to blood. Each step more invasive, more binding. You think about tomorrow, and a chill runs down your spine. Because if today proved they would bleed for the emperor, then tomorrow must prove something even more dangerous. Tomorrow, they will have to choose between love and survival. And if you thought blood was sacred, wait until you see what happens when loyalty demands the heart itself. You wake to laughter. Not joyful laughter, but the sharp, practiced kind that sounds rehearsed, like actors pretending at joy. For a moment, you wonder if you're dreaming. Then you open your eyes and remember no one dreams here. Or if they do, they never admit it. Dreams are dangerous. The concubines are being herded like silk, clad swans into the chamber of harmonious voices, and you shuffle along behind them. The walls are covered in painted blossoms, pink petals frozen mid-bloom. The air is thick with the perfume of crushed magnolia, sweet enough to sting your throat. Eunuchs line the perimeter, still as shadows, their eyes watchful. You know by now what that means. Something ugly is about to hide itself beneath something beautiful. Today's loyalty test is not about blood, or flesh, or silence. Today the eunuchs announce loyalty will be measured in love. Or, more precisely, the denial of it. The words fall like stones into still water, rippling outward until they reach you. Love, here, is a trap, and they're about to prove it. The first trial is almost theatrical. A concubine is summoned to the center of the chamber, where a man stands waiting. He is handsome, dressed not in the robes of an emperor, but the plain clothes of a court musician. His eyes flick nervously, his hands fiddle with the edge of his sleeve. He bows low. Then the eunuchs speak. She must reject him, publicly, loudly, cruelly even. For he is a decoy, a phantom of temptation sent to lure her heart away from its rightful owner, the emperor. You watch as the concubine takes a deep breath. Her face composed, her voice steady as she denounces the man as if he were dirt beneath her feet. His eyes flicker, as though wounded, though you know it is a role he has been paid, or ordered, to play. Still the cruelty is real, the humiliation sharp. He bows again and withdraws, but the mark is made. She has passed. The next woman hesitates. Her lips part, her voice trembles. And in that tremble is danger. The eunuch's eyes narrow. A delay is enough to plant suspicion, enough to fester into poison. She recovers quickly, voice rising sharp and cold, but the damage is done. You can feel it. The shift in the air, like wolves scenting blood. You realize then that this isn't just theater. It's a trap for the heart itself. The concubines must prove that they are incapable of love outside the emperor, incapable of desire, incapable of tenderness. It is not enough to stay silent. It must be rejected, spit upon, crushed. Imagine deleting not just your dating apps, but your ability to even blush at a smile. Here, even a glance is a betrayal. The next trial is more subtle, and somehow crueler. Each concubine is handed a scroll of poetry, lines dripping with romance, words of longing, words that would make a lover swoon. They're tasked to read the verses, but twist their meaning until every phrase becomes praise for the emperor alone. It's a game of interpretation, a contortion of the heart into devotion. You listen as one woman reads, her voice steady, transforming lines of "I miss your touch" into "I miss the emperor's gaze." Another woman falters, her words catching on the intimacy of the poem. A flicker of real feeling escapes her lips before she bends it back into obedience. You can see the strain, the way her chest rises sharply, the way her eyes glisten. You think about high school English class, about teachers insisting there was a hidden meaning behind every poem. At least then, your grade was all that suffered. Here, misinterpret Shakespeare and you don't just fail, you vanish. The air grows heavier, the chamber tighter. Then comes the cruelest trial of all. The eunuchs bring forward letters. Real letters, written long ago by family, friends, sometimes lovers. Relics of the past that should have been private, but nothing is private here. The concubines must read these aloud and then burn them. You watch as one woman's hands tremble while she holds a letter written in her mother's script. The ink is faded, the strokes careful. You can almost hear the voice behind it, soft and familiar, urging her to eat well, to take care of her health, to remember the warmth of home. The woman's lips part, her eyes shine, but then she sets the page to flame. The fire eats her mother's words in seconds, leaving only smoke curling toward the painted blossoms above. Another woman's letter is from a lover. The words are urgent, raw, spilling across the paper like spilled ink. He begs her not to forget him, not to vanish into the palace. She reads it in a flat tone, her face unreadable. Then she lights it, holds it until the flames lick her fingers, and lets it drop into ash. You want to look away, but you can't. It is like watching someone burn their own heartbeat. You think about the texts on your phone, the jokes from friends, the late-night confessions, the embarrassing memes you'd rather die than let someone else read. Now imagine being forced to set them alight, one by one, in front of strangers, while being judged on whether your face flinched. You'd be executed halfway through your group chat history. By evening, the concubines are pale, their eyes rimmed with shadows. Yet their faces remain smooth, practiced masks. The palace does not tolerate cracks. You follow them back through the corridors, the laughter of eunuchs echoing faintly behind you, too sharp, too rehearsed. That night, sleep is impossible. You lie awake beneath silk drapes that feel heavier than chains, replaying the day in your mind. Love turned into treason, affection twisted into crime. The thought gnaws at you what happens to those who fail. You've seen hesitation, tears, faltering voices. What becomes of them once the doors close? A shadow passes your chamber door. You sit up, breath caught, heart pounding. But it is only a servant carrying a tray of oil lamps. Still, you can't shake the image, concubines vanishing into silence, their names struck from ledgers, their faces erased. Loyalty is not proven by devotion here. It is proven by sacrifice, by how much of yourself you are willing to burn away. And yet, you know this isn't the end. If love can be destroyed so ruthlessly, then what remains to be tested? You close your eyes, exhaustion finally tugging at you. And the answer curls in your mind like smoke. If today was about the heart, tomorrow will be about desire itself. And if you thought love was dangerous in this palace, wait until you see how they treat lust. You wake with a start to the sound of silk rustling. Not the usual disciplined shuffle of concubines being herded like peacocks, but something softer, slyer. When you sit up, the chamber is awash in candlelight. The air heavy with a sweetness that isn't incense. It's musk, warm, human, dizzying. You cough before you can stop yourself, earning a sharp glance from a servant who glides by carrying a tray of lacquered boxes. Whatever today is, it isn't going to be subtle. The eunuchs call the concubines into the chamber of crimson petals. The name itself is enough to make your ears warm. The walls are hung with drapes of deep red silk, heavy and rippling faintly in the candlelight. The floor is scattered with rose petals, so fresh their perfume hangs in the air like a drug. You inhale, then regret it. The sweetness sticks in your throat until you feel almost drunk. This, you realize, is not about poetry or sparrows or even wolves. This is about desire, about proving that every longing, every secret thought, belongs only to the emperor. The eunuchs announce the first trial, and you almost laugh aloud from shock. Dancers enter, their silk robes sliding from their shoulders as they move with deliberate slowness, bodies twisting like smoke. The concubines are ordered to watch without reaction. Their faces must remain serene, their eyes lowered, their posture impeccable. Desire is temptation. Desire is betrayal. Even a flicker of interest is a crime. You watch them, and your own cheeks flush. The music thrums low, the rhythm almost too human, too intimate. The concubine sits still as stone, but you can feel the tension, see the faintest tightening of knuckles hidden inside their sleeves. You shift uncomfortably, and think about your own lack of poker face, how one glance during a work meeting gives you away. Here, that glance could cost a life. The second trial is worse. The eunuchs bring forward trays of food, peaches, honeycomb, figs so ripe they drip onto the silver plates. The concubines are told to eat slowly, to savor each bite, but to show no pleasure. It's not about food. It's about desire, indulgence, the body's cravings. To show enjoyment is to betray the emperor, as though your tongue itself could be unfaithful. You pick up a slice of peach, juice spilling across your fingers. Sticky and golden, the flavor bursts across your tongue, and you nearly sigh aloud before catching yourself. One concubine does slip. A faint sound of pleasure escapes her lips. The room freezes. The eunuch closest to her scribbles a mark in his ledger, his face carved of stone. The woman lowers her eyes, and the air grows colder, sharper, as though everyone has silently stepped away from her. You think of how loudly you groan when biting into a burger after a long day. You'd be publicly executed before dessert. But the eunuchs are not finished. They never are. The next test comes with the arrival of strangers, men dressed as guards, their faces hidden behind masks of bronze and gold. They kneel before the concubines, presenting cups of wine. The task to drink without fear, without flirtation, without the faintest spark of curiosity. The men linger as they pour, their hands brushing a little too close, their movements drawn out. It is theatre, again. A trap disguised as hospitality. The women sip without expression. One lifts her cup too quickly, and the wine dribbles down her chin. The masked man wipes it away with deliberate slowness, and though she flinches only slightly, the damage is done. Another mark is made in the ledger. The wine is strong, burning your throat as you taste it. You're not sure if it's spiced with cinnamon or poison. But either way, it makes your head swim. The eunuchs are watching closely for that too. How well the women hold themselves when their blood is warmed, when restraint grows harder. This is loyalty at its cruelest, denying even the body's smallest betrayals. And then, the final trial of the night. The eunuchs call for silence. The concubines are brought forward one by one into a side chamber lit only by lanterns. You slip in behind, the shadows your cloak. There, in the dim light, sits a figure robed in imperial yellow. He does not speak, does not move. Perhaps he is the emperor. Perhaps he is a decoy. Perhaps he is only a puppet meant to test reactions. The concubines must kneel, bow, and gaze upon him without lust, without presumption, only reverence. You can feel the air crackle with tension. To look too long is dangerous. To look too briefly is insulting. To let even the smallest flicker of longing show is death. It is an impossible balance, a tightrope strung across a pit with no bottom. And yet each woman walks it, trembling inwardly, serene outwardly. Her every breath a prayer that her mask does not crack. Your own heart races. You are staring too, though you know you shouldn't. The man's face is half hidden, but the weight of his presence presses on your skin like heat. You look away, then glance back, then immediately scold yourself. If anyone were watching, you'd already be a corpse. At last, the concubines are dismissed. They retreat in silence, the red silk drape swallowing them whole. You stumble into the courtyard, lungs gasping for the cooler night air. The moon above looks pale and distant, like a coin lost in the sky. You wonder if the women dream of escape, or if they've forgotten how to. You think about desire in your own time, about how advertisements, movies, even phone screens drip with it, constant and unending. Here, it is a weapon. Here, it is the sharpest blade. The palace teaches not just to suppress desire, but to turn its suppression into proof of devotion. A loyalty test written on the skin, in the heartbeat, in the longing that must never surface. You sink onto a stone bench, staring at the koi pond as the fish ripple in lazy circles. Desire is natural, you think? Human. To punish it is to punish life itself. And yet here, they've turned it into a noose. One false move, one flutter of breath, one slip of the mask, and loyalty shatters. A breeze stirs the petals drifting across the courtyard. You watch them scatter, dancing briefly before falling to the ground. Fragile, fleeting, easily crushed beneath a careless step. And you realize that is exactly how the palace views its concubines. Beautiful, yes. Desired, yes. But ultimately disposable. You rise, legs unsteady, and glance back toward the chamber of crimson petals, its silk curtains swaying faintly in the night wind. You know the tests are not finished. Because if today was about desire, then tomorrow will be about power. And if you thought lust was dangerous, wait until you see what happens when loyalty is measured against ambition. You wake before dawn to the sound of whispers. Not the prayers of servants, not the measured calls of eunuchs, but the hushed, sharp kind of whispering that comes when people don't want to be heard. You lie still, eyes half closed, the way you might pretend to be asleep during a family argument in your childhood home. Because if you're still, the truth leaks out. The concubines are murmuring like doves in the dark. Except these doves have talons. You can hear names being spoken, names edged with envy, clipped with resentment. The palace has turned loyalty into a performance for the emperor. Yes, but tonight you realize the harder test isn't for him at all. It's for the women against each other. Because ambition, in these walls, is both forbidden and required. When the sun finally rises, golden light slanting across the lacquered doors, the eunuchs summon everyone to the hall of autumn frost. The irony of the name isn't lost on you. It is warm as a furnace inside, the braziers glowing, the carved phoenixes on the walls almost alive in the firelight. But the air has a bite, a frost of suspicion, sharp and invisible. You shuffle forward with the others, your silk robes rustling in unison. The eunuchs announce today's trial, a game of poetry. It sounds harmless, even charming, until you see the way the women's shoulders stiffen. Each concubine is to compose a verse in honor of the emperor. Sweet enough to please, modest enough not to presume, clever enough to stand out, but never clever enough to threaten. You're handed a brush. The inkstone glistens, its black pool reflecting your uncertain face. You dip the tip, hand trembling. The woman beside you bends over her paper, her wrist moving like water. You know instantly she has been trained for this since childhood. Her characters bloom like lotus petals. Yours wobble like a toddler, trying chopsticks for the first time. But it's not the calligraphy that matters, it's the undertones. Each word carries the potential for flattery or treason. One concubine writes of the moon, ever faithful to the sun. Another writes of rivers, seeking only the sea. You see the double meanings, the hints of ambition hidden beneath silk metaphors. Every line is a risk, every rhyme a dagger disguised as a blossom. You try to imagine writing a work email like this, where a misplaced comma could get you executed. Suddenly, that typo in last week's report feels like freedom. The eunuchs collect the papers, reading them aloud. The emperor, if he even hears them, remains behind his screen, unseen, untouchable. But the concubines hear, and that is enough. You watch the way they glance sideways at one another, eyes narrowing, lips twitching in half smiles. Praise from the eunuchs is daggers in disguise. Too much favor, and you are marked. Too little, and you are forgotten. Both in time mean death. The poetry ends, but the trial has only just begun. Now comes the banquet. The tables are laid with bowls of steaming rice, duck lacquered with honey, platters of dumplings plump as pillows. It looks generous, almost indulgent, but you've learned by now that nothing in this palace is truly a gift. The eunuchs explain the concubines must serve one another. No spilling. No favoritism. No visible hesitation when placing food before arrival. It sounds ridiculous, until you see the trembling hands. A drop of sauce on the sleeve of the wrong woman can become a rumor by nightfall. An uneven portion can spark suspicion. You ladle soup into a porcelain bowl. Praying your hand doesn't shake. Across the table, a woman pauses before serving her neighbor, and you see the moment hang like a thread, taut and glittering. Then she pours smooth as honey, her smile practiced, her ambition hidden. You taste nothing of your own food. Every bite feels like ash, like swallowing air. The women larser softly, but their eyes are sharp, calculating. You realize this isn't a banquet. It's a battlefield, played with porcelain and chopsticks instead of swords. And then, the real cruelty begins. The eunuchs announce that each concubine must speak of another woman's virtue. Compliment her, they say. Praise her as though she were a sister. The hall goes silent. You've never heard silence so loud. The women bow their heads, but you can see their jaws tightening, their hands clenched beneath the tablecloth. One by one, they speak. Her beauty is as constant as spring. Her wisdom shines brighter than jade. The words are honeyed, but the voices drip venom. Each compliment is also a trap. Too faint, and you are accused of jealousy. Too strong, and you are accused of scheming. The game is not to praise, but to survive praise. When your turn comes, you nearly choke. What can you say that doesn't sound like an insult? Doesn't sound like longing? Doesn't sound like a lie? Finally, you murmur something about grace in silence. It feels bland enough to pass. Still, you sense eyes on you, cold, measuring. You wonder if any of them truly believe their own words, or if every syllable is stitched from fear. And then you realize loyalty here isn't to the emperor, nor to virtue, nor even to survival. It's to the mask itself. The palace doesn't care if you are honest. It cares only that you wear your lies beautifully. Night falls, and you wander back to the courtyard. The koi still circle in their pond, fat and oblivious, mouths opening and closing in eternal hunger. You envy them. Stupid creatures that they are. They can want without punishment. They can swim without ambition being counted against them. Behind you, the women's laughter rises, too sharp to be true. You picture knives hidden in silk sleeves, poison hidden in lacquered cups. Tomorrow, perhaps, the tests will shift again, perhaps to loyalty in pain, or loyalty in silence. The palace is endlessly creative in its cruelty. You lie down, staring at the stars. They seem distant, untouchable, like the emperor himself. And you realize with a cold shiver that you've begun to think like them. You measure your words, your gestures, your very breath, as though someone is always watching. Because here, someone always is. If you thought ambition was a dangerous spark tonight, wait until you see how they test loyalty through suffering. The gong strikes 3 times, deep and hollow, and you feel the vibration shiver through your bones. It's still dark, not dawn but that peculiar hour when the night feels stale and heavy. You rise with the others, robes dragging across cold stone. and follow the eunuchs into a chamber you've never seen before. The name hisses on their tongues, the Hall of Withered Bamboo. The air inside is damp, almost metallic, like rainwater mixed with rust. Bamboo poles line the walls, their stalks split and frayed as though they have been beaten, or used to beat. The floor is bare except for mats woven of straw, so rough you feel their prickling texture, even through the thin soles of your shoes. You know instantly, this is not a place for poetry or banquets. The eunuchs explain with chilling calm today, loyalty is measured not by words, nor restraint, nor politeness, but by suffering. The emperor's women must show they can endure pain without faltering, without complaint, without breaking the mask of obedience. The first trial seems deceptively simple. Each concubine is handed a pair of iron bangles, chilled so sharply by the night air that your skin sticks to them when you grip. You're told to hold them out at arm's length, palms flat, while the eunuchs walk among you, correcting posture with thin bamboo rods. The weight is not crushing, but it grows heavier by the breath. Your shoulders tremble, your muscles burn, and still the eunuchs repeat, smile. You glance sideways. One woman's lip twitches, just for a moment, but the rod snaps across her back before she can flinch. The sound is quick, almost musical, but her silence is more frightening than any scream. She swallows it, bowing her head lower, and the red mark blossoms across her silk like ink spreading in water. You last longer than you expect, though every second stretches. Your arms ache, your chest tightens, and the thought comes unbidden: this feels like holding a selfie stick for too long, except instead of embarrassment, the price is execution. The second trial begins before your breath has steadied. Bowls are brought forth, filled with scalding water. The concubines are told to dip their hands, hold them there, and remove them only at the eunuch's command. The steam rises in ghostly curls, kissing your face before the burn even begins. When your fingers slide beneath, the pain is immediate, white-hot, as if fire has been poured into your veins. You grit your teeth, forcing your lips into a practiced curve of serenity. You hear one woman's breath catch, sharp and small. The rod cracks down again. No words of comfort follow, only silence. You think of hot coffee spilled on your lap in a crowded cafe, and how that alone nearly ruined your day. Here, that same wince would ruin your life. The third trial is crueler still. Wooden sandals are strapped to your feet, the soles studded with small metal thorns. The eunuchs order everyone to walk slowly across the chamber, back and forth, each step sinking the spikes into tender flesh. Blood smears faintly on the mats, not enough to kill, just enough to mark. The sound of footsteps fills the hall, a shuffle, a whisper, a rhythm of agony wrapped in obedience. You force yourself forward, biting the inside of your cheek until you taste copper. It is a strange kind of theater, you realize, where the audience is both emperor and enemy, and the performance is your own silence. You remember the last time you wore uncomfortable shoes for fashion, cursing every step. At least then, you could take them off. Here there is no relief, only endurance. By the time the sandals are removed, your feet are raw, swollen, throbbing with each pulse of blood. The eunuchs order you to kneel, not on cushions, but on raw millet seeds scattered across the floor. You drop down, and the tiny grains bite into your skin, sharp as broken glass. Minutes stretch into eternities. The seeds grind deeper, cutting little crescents into your knees. Still, no one moves, no one dares. One woman finally falters, shifting her weight in a desperate attempt to ease the pain. The eunuchs pounce, noting her weakness. They do not strike her, not yet. That will come later, in shadows where screams cannot be heard. You sit frozen, trembling inside your skin. It dawns on you that loyalty here is not about the emperor at all. It's about the system. About proving to the walls, to the air, to history itself, that your body belongs not to you but to the empire. Your flesh is currency, your silence the receipt. At last, the eunuchs clap their hands, sharp as thunder. The trials end. You collapse inward, every joint screaming though your lips remain locked in their serene mask. The concubines rise together, moving like ghosts, their faces still smooth though their bodies scream with bruises. You step outside into the courtyard, the cool night air flooding your lungs. The stars above look indifferent, scattered like careless grains of millet across the sky. You think of how many women knelt beneath those same stars, their pain swallowed whole, their names forgotten. And you realize the cruelest truth of all: the palace doesn't test loyalty to preserve it. It tests loyalty to destroy the possibility of rebellion before it even forms. To break you quietly, so that you no longer know the difference between devotion and survival. If you thought pain was the harshest measure of loyalty, wait until you see how silence itself can be turned into the deadliest test of all. The hall is hushed when you enter. So quiet you can hear the faintest drip of water somewhere in the rafters. Even the eunuch's slippers whisper against the polished floor. It is not the silence of peace. It is the silence of a held breath, of a room waiting for someone to make the first mistake. You join the concubines in 2 rows, your knees pressing the cold tiles. Candles flicker, their flames quivering as though they too fear being noticed. At the far end of the hall stands a tall lacquered screen painted with cranes. You know without being told that the emperor, or perhaps only his shadow, sits behind it, watching, listening. The eunuchs announce the rules with deliberate calm. No concubine may speak unless spoken to. No concubine may react to a provocation. Tonight, silence itself is the proof of loyalty. You almost laugh. If silence were a test, you'd have failed years ago. You think of all the times you've blurted out the wrong thing, cracked a joke in the wrong moment, overshared in a text. Here, even clearing your throat could be taken as rebellion. The first test begins immediately. Servants drift among the women, whispering sharp words into their ears. He favors another. They say your beauty is fading. You are nothing here. The words are daggers, carefully chosen to slice at pride and fear. The concubine's task is to endure them without reply, without even a flicker across their faces. You feel a servant's breath against your ear, hot and sour. He does not even remember your name. The words sting, though they aren't even meant for you. Your jaw clenches. Every fiber of your being wants to snap back, to defend, to spit fire. But your lips remain sealed, your face carved from stone. You wonder how long before the silence cracks someone open. And it does. One woman mutters under her breath, too soft to be understood, but not soft enough to be ignored. The eunuchs descend instantly, marking her with quiet efficiency. She bows low, trembling, but it is too late. In the palace, even whispers are screams. The second test is crueler. Eunuchs begin to drop porcelain bowls. The crash of shattering echoes through the hall like thunder. Some concubines flinch, others stiffen, but the demand is the same: no reaction. Not a gasp, not a twitch, not even a blink too quick. The silence must remain unbroken. When the third bowl shatters, shards skitter across the floor toward you. Instinct tells you to move your hand away, but you force it still. A sliver of porcelain slices your finger, and you feel the warm bloom of blood. Still, you smile faintly, as though it were nothing. Inwardly, you're cursing. Outwardly, you are a mask. The third trial comes like a whisper turned inside out. One by one, concubines are summoned to kneel before the screen. They are asked questions by a voice soft as silk, low as thunder. What do you dream of? Who do you envy? What do you fear most? The trap is obvious. To answer honestly is dangerous. To lie too cleverly is worse. The safest answer is no answer at all. And yet silence before the emperor, or his phantom, is also an insult. Each woman must tread the impossible line between speech and silence, truth and nothing. You watch as one trembles, lips parted, caught between terror and duty. She finally whispers, "I fear nothing." The silence that follows is heavier than any roar. The eunuchs mark their ledgers again. Too bold, too proud, too suspicious. When your turn comes, the voice behind the screen asks softly, "What is your greatest desire?" The words coil around you, tempting, teasing. Every answer you can think of is wrong. Riches, death, love, death, freedom, death twice over. So you bow lower, pressing your forehead to the cold floor, and let the silence stretch. Seconds bleed into eternities. Finally, the eunuchs move on. Your lack of answer is an answer in itself, loyalty through restraint. Or perhaps only survival. Hours crawl by. The hall is littered with broken porcelain, smeared with drops of blood, echoing with whispers that were never answered. The women look hollowed, their eyes shadowed, but still serene. The silence has become a living thing, coiled around their throats, pressing down on their chests. When the eunuchs finally dismiss you, the release is almost worse. The courtyard feels too loud, the rustle of trees, the croak of frogs in the pond, the faint clatter of servants in the distance. Each sound makes you twitch. After so much silence, the world itself feels rebellious. You sit on the stone bench, staring at your bloodied finger. The stars blink overhead, indifferent as always. You realize that silence is the cruelest trial of all, because it follows you even when the chamber is empty. You've swallowed your voice, buried your words, hidden your truth. You begin to wonder if one day you'll forget how to speak altogether. And then a darker thought creeps in. Maybe that's the point. If you thought silence was suffocating, wait until you see how loyalty is tested through betrayal. The dawn sky is the color of bruised plum when the summons comes. A eunuch's voice pierces the hush of the courtyard. Carrying the sharpness of command, the concubines are to assemble in the chamber of fragrant shadows. You wince at the name. It sounds almost lovely, like a place of music or perfume. But you've learned by now, the more beautiful the title, the uglier the truth within. You walk with the others beneath the painted eaves, your footsteps echoing hollowly on stone. The chamber is dim, the air thick with the scent of sandalwood. A table stretches down the center, its lacquered surface polished so smooth you can see your reflection, pale and anxious. Upon it lies a row of scrolls, sealed with wax. The eunuchs explain the day's trial. Each concubine will receive a scroll. Inside, a question. Each must write the name of another concubine in answer. The names will not be revealed immediately, only gathered, sealed, and presented to the emperor. The question is not spoken aloud until the moment you kneel. When the wax breaks, you hear it whispered into your ear. Who is least loyal? You feel your stomach turn. This is no test of endurance. This is a pit, and every woman is pushed into it with a brush in her hand. You look around. Some concubines bend instantly over their parchment, their wrists steady, their ink flowing. Others hesitate, the brush hovering as though it weighs 1,000 catties. You sense the trembling, the terror, the desperation. To write a name is to mark an enemy. To leave it blank is to mark yourself. Your hand shakes as you dip the brush. The ink gleams black, thicker than blood. 100 names swim through your mind, but none feel safe. Choose the wrong woman, and she may rise later to destroy you. Choose none, and you've already destroyed yourself. Finally, you write. The character feels like betrayal carved into silk. You seal it, bow low, and hand it over. The eunuchs collect the scrolls, their faces unreadable. You realize then, the palace doesn't need to punish anyone today. The punishment is already done. Suspicion has been planted. Every concubine now walks with the knowledge that someone, many someones, have named her as disloyal. Even without proof, the fear will gnaw them hollow. You return to your quarters that evening, but the silence is different now. The women do not whisper together as before. They sit apart, each wrapped in her own thoughts, her own dread. You see one glance sharply at her neighbor, lips tightening. Another fidgets, twisting her sleeve. As though trying to shake loose the invisible mark she surely feels upon her. The palace doesn't need swords. It has something sharper doubt. The second test follows at midnight. You're dragged back to the chamber, the floor lit with lanterns that burn low and smoky. This time, the eunuchs present a tray of objects, jade hairpins, embroidered handkerchiefs, little carved animals of ivory. Tokens belonging to each concubine. The rules are spoken with icy simplicity. Choose one token. Place it in the brazier. Burn it. You feel your throat tighten. To burn a woman's token is to brand her disloyal. To destroy her belonging is to erase her presence. And yet, to refuse is to betray yourself. The brazier roars in the center of the hall, its flames licking upward like a hungry mouth. One by one, the women step forward. Some hesitate, trembling before the choice. Others move quickly, their faces serene masks, though you see their eyes glitter like knives. A jade hairpin falls into the fire. Embroidery curls to ash. The ivory animals crack and blacken. When your turn comes, your fingers hover over the tray. The objects seem to quiver. Alive with silent pleas, you lift one. It feels heavier than stone, and drop it into the flames. You force your face still as the smoke coils upward. The woman to whom it belonged glances at you, just once. The look is brief, but it slices deeper than any bamboo rod. That night, as you lie sleepless on the hard pallet, you understand the depth of the trial. The emperor doesn't need to demand loyalty directly. He has taught you to betray one another, to do his work for him. You've become his weapon against your own sisters. And the worst part, You begin to feel the shift inside yourself. You're already calculating, already deciding who might be safest to name tomorrow, already protecting your own mask. Ambition was dangerous, pain was cruel, silence was suffocating. But this is rot. This is how loyalty becomes poison. And if you think burning tokens is the limit, wait until you see how betrayal is demanded not in objects, but in flesh. The morning bells sound harsher than usual, as if the metal itself knows what is coming. The concubines file into the hall of jade lattice, and you know instantly this will not be like the other trials. The chamber is too bright, flooded with daylight that pours through carved screens, making the air shimmer with patterns of light and shadow. It feels like a stage set for something terrible. At the center of the hall stand two women, already bound at the wrists with silken cords. They kneel, heads bowed, their hair falling like curtains to hide their faces. You recognize them. Both have sat beside you at banquets. Both have whispered faint gossip during sleepless nights. And now both kneel as though they are offerings. The eunuchs speak with the coolness of accountants tallying grain. The emperor has decreed that loyalty is not only proven by silence or endurance, but by sacrifice. Today, concubines must choose who among them deserves punishment. A murmur ripples through the hall, quickly strangled into silence. The women kneel straighter, faces composed, though you can see their shoulders trembling beneath the silk. The eunuchs place brushes and slips of paper before you. The command is simple. Write down the name of one of the two women who kneel. Whichever is chosen by majority will be punished for disloyalty. Your stomach lurches. This is no longer a question of rumor-fed paranoia. This is blood, demanded openly. You glance around. Faces remain serene, but you see the flicker in their eyes, the calculations racing behind the masks. You lower your brush. Ink glistens black as oil. You try to still your shaking hand. Write a name, and you condemn a woman you've spoken to, perhaps even laughed with. Refuse, and you condemn yourself. The scratch of brushes fills the chamber. The papers are collected. A eunuch unfolds them slowly, his expression unmoved. He announces a name. The chosen woman lifts her head, eyes wide. There is no scream. No outburst, only a faint gasp before the guard sees her. She is dragged to the edge of the hall, where a low platform waits. Bamboo rods, polished smooth, lean against it. The punishment is not death, at least not today, but pain made public. The rods strike with sharp, echoing cracks. She bites her lip until blood stains her chin, refusing to cry out. The concubines sit frozen, eyes lowered, watching without watching. And you, too, force yourself still, though every crack of bamboo rattles inside your ribs. When the punishment ends, she collapses, barely conscious. She is carried away like a broken doll. The other woman, spared, bows deeply. But you notice her hands shaking as she hides them in her sleeves. She has not won safety, only survived for now. You think the trial must be over. But the eunuchs are not finished. Another test follows. The women are divided into small groups. In each, one concubine is accused at random of treachery. The others must speak, not in her defense, but against her. Silence will be read as disloyalty to the emperor. Your group circles around a trembling girl no older than 16. Her name is called, her virtue questioned. She shakes her head desperately, whispering, "I have done nothing." Her voice wavers like a reed in the wind. You know she is innocent. Everyone does. But innocence is not the point. The eunuchs watch closely, waiting to see if anyone hesitates to accuse. One by one voices rise. Soft, calm, deadly. She looked too long at the emperor's robe. She whispered to a servant. Her loyalty wavers. Lies as thin as spider silk, spun without hesitation. When it is your turn you hesitate, just for a breath. The girl's eyes meet yours, wide and pleading. For a heartbeat, you think of saying nothing. But the silence stretches too long, and you know the eunuchs are watching. Your mouth opens. Words spill out. You hear yourself accuse, voice steady, almost bored, as though rehearsed. It feels like betrayal crawling out of your throat, coating your tongue in ash. The girl sobs once, a sound quickly swallowed by the cavernous hall. The eunuchs nod. The ledger is marked. And just like that, she is erased. When the trials end, the concubines drift away like shadows, each carrying a new weight of guilt, of survival bought at someone else's cost. The corridors feel narrower, the air heavier. You can almost hear the palace walls sighing, satisfied. That night, you sit alone, staring at your hands. They are steady now, no longer trembling. You realize with horror that you are adapting. Betrayal has become instinct, a reflex as natural as bowing. The palace has succeeded. Not by demanding your loyalty, but by teaching you to destroy everyone else's. The koi pond ripples under the moonlight, the fish circling endlessly. They devour whatever falls into the water, even their own young if hunger demands it. You wonder if the emperor has been watching them all along, and simply decided to make his concubines the same. If you thought betrayal was the cruelest test of loyalty, wait until you see how memory itself becomes a weapon, when even the past is twisted to prove devotion. The moon is a thin blade tonight, carving pale light across the roof tiles as you are summoned once again. By now, your heart doesn't even race. Fear has settled into something colder, heavier. You know the emperor's trials are endless, like waves beating stone, always returning, always reshaping. Tonight, you suspect, will not be different. And yet, as you enter the Hall of Whispering Curtains, you realize this trial is unlike any you have seen before. The hall is silent. Not the heavy silence of dread, but something sharper, as if the air itself has been ordered to hush. The eunuchs stand at intervals, their expressions waxen. At the center, beneath a canopy embroidered with dragons, rests a single object, a scroll, unrolled upon a lacquered table. Its ink glistens fresh, though you know the words must be ancient. The chief eunuch's voice is low, but it carries, tonight, loyalty will be tested not by what you do, but by what you remember. A ripple of unease travels through the concubines. You feel it in your own spine. Memory is yours alone, the last hidden corner untouched by rods, fire, or betrayal. To have that dragged into the open feels worse than pain. The eunuch explains. Each concubine will be called to recite. She must speak of her first encounter with the emperor. She must remember every detail. What was said, what was worn, what fragrance lingered in the air, and she must tell it exactly as the scroll records. You blink, confusion stirring. How can the scroll know? But then you understand. It is not your truth that matters. It is the emperor's truth, written, fixed, unchangeable. If your memory strays, if you recall the wrong robe, the wrong word, the wrong breath, you are branded disloyal. The first woman kneels, voice trembling as she recounts her memory. It is tender, hesitant, clearly honest. Too honest. Within moments, the eunuch interrupts, snapping her back to the scroll. The record says otherwise. She falters. She protests faintly. And for that, she is dragged aside, her cries swallowed by the curtains. Another woman steps forward, sharper, cleverer. She does not speak from memory at all, but from the scroll, parroting it line by line. She survives. Her loyalty is praised. But you see the price. She has erased herself entirely. Her truth is gone. The emperor's truth is all that remains. When your turn comes, your mouth is dry, your mind torn. You remember that night vividly, the way the candles sputtered, the faint stain on his sleeve, the bitter taste of fear in your throat. But the scroll says differently. It insists the candles burn steady, his robe flawless, your demeanor graceful as a swan. You close your eyes. You weigh the choice. Speak the truth and vanish. Speak the lie and survive. You open your mouth, and the words that come are not your own. You give the emperor's memory, polished, flawless, false. The eunuchs nod. You are past. But something inside you crumbles, and the sound of it echoes louder than bamboo rods or burning silk. The trial does not end there. Once each concubine has recited, the eunuchs change the game. Now, you must correct each other's memories. A woman speaks, and another must step forward and declare her mistaken, unfaithful, disloyal in recollection. It is a massacre. Women who once whispered secrets together now dissect one another's words with surgical cruelty. A misplaced phrase, a hesitation, a tone of voice. Each is seized, twisted, offered up as evidence of treachery. You are called again. This time not to speak, but to judge. Another concubine, eyes red from lack of sleep, recounts her memory. She is close, so close to matching the scroll. But her voice wavers on a single detail. All eyes turn to you. The silence tightens like a noose. Your choice is clear. To defend her is to risk being marked with her error. To accuse her is to prove yourself. You lift your chin. Your words fall cold, precise. You declare her mistaken. The eunuchs nod. She is taken. Her eyes cling to yours as they drag her away, wide with disbelief. She thought you might spare her. She thought wrong. You lower your gaze, because if you meet those eyes too long, you might see yourself in them. By the end of the night, the hall is nearly empty. So many women have been carried out, whether punished, erased, or vanished entirely, that the silence feels like a tomb. Those who remain sit stiff-backed, perfect masks. No tears, no whispers, no flickers of defiance. You understand now. This is the Emperor's final weapon. Not pain, not betrayal, but memory itself. By forcing you to rewrite the past, to deny what you lived, he has hollowed you out. You are no longer yourself. You are his reflection repeating his truth. And yet, in some dark corner of your mind, a seed of rebellion stirs. You wonder if you can keep your memories secret, hidden where no scroll can touch. You wonder if, someday, you might whisper them again, not here, not now, but somewhere beyond these walls. The lanterns gutter low. The eunuchs dismiss you. You walk the corridor like a ghost, the silk of your robes whispering against the stone. You think of the concubines who came before, who passed through these same trials, who forgot themselves so thoroughly that even history does not remember their names. As you pass the lotus pond, the flowers bow under the weight of dew. Their petals will fall by morning, vanishing as though they were never here. You wonder if the Emperor prefers it this way, that every concubine bloom brightly, then disappear, leaving no trace but his story. The night air is cool, carrying the faint scent of pine. You breathe it in, clutching the memory like contraband. It is yours. It may be the last thing that is. And as you step into your chamber, you realize the cruelest truth of all: loyalty was never about love, or service, or devotion. It was about erasure. To prove yourself loyal, you must forget you ever existed. If you thought memory was the final test, wait until you learn that even history itself can be rewritten. Where the Emperor decides not only what you recall, but what the world remembers of you.